Hello and welcome to The Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora, and I do this show every week in order to speak about concepts of giving birth to this new dimension collectively, individually, and what it is a combination of the realm of spirit or pure energy or pure consciousness with the realm of matter. And this is a seamless continuum of these two different aspects of consciousness being combined together in order to give us a new experience, as opposed to the present and previous levels of bifurcation that we've been experiencing, where there is a membrane of separation that separates the ego or the self from the context. This membrane of separation or boundary separates matter, the physical embodiment or densification of energy, from pure energy or pure consciousness, and a variety of other dualistic concepts. Brief pause. So I am here with a tool, and when I say I am here, I'm a galactic abstraction. I'm an abstract energy consciousness that does not usually have a face and two arms and two legs, but I do right now because I came into this body through the oscillation of the genetic structure that I invented that is called the flying rainbow lasagna. So I know that's not a very serious name. It's a very light-hearted name. However, I urge you to take the concept seriously, that this is the basic synopsis of my experience here. The previous corporeal occupant of this body, like the previous ego structure, was literally destroyed, and the body experienced a metabolic death. And it would have just died and decomposed if some great unlikely event had not happened. And the great unlikely event is the oscillation maneuver called the flying rainbow lasagna. And I, the abstract energy presence that did that oscillation maneuver, I'm not from around here. And I'd like to draw some distinctions too, because I'm also understanding that I'm speaking my personal story, my experience as an individual within this cultural context where many other people are also speaking about their experiences. And it's taken me a long time to understand. It's just like if you're a musician. I got my little piano here, and you're making your own music, and then all of a sudden you start listening to the radio and you start listening to concerts, and you're like, oh, that's what other music is being played around here. And there are some elements that I can relate to, but there are some elements that are just way distorted and not at all what I am exploring myself. So recently, in the past couple of years, I've been exposed to a lot of the information that is coming from people that say that they've had abduction experiences or secret space program experiences, or I'm trying to think of the right words, that people have had experiences that are otherworldly or inexplicable, and they're sharing them. And so I've recognized that when I say something like, if I say I'm a walk-in, that then I'm speaking through the cultural filter of understanding of other people who have been here and who have said that they're walk-ins. So this is why I've been refining my language of my self-description of my experience in order to say I'm a galactic abstraction. I'm a form of consciousness that usually is a brightly colored polygon emitting musical sounds. I'm just playing a little something there. Yes, usually that is what I'm like, and I'm not alone in my artistic expression in the higher dimensional state. I'm with a whole group of people, like a symphony or like a group of acrobats or like a dance troupe, and we all work together. So there were a lot of things that I didn't understand when I came into this cultural context. I didn't understand a lot of the mentality of competition and lack of support for one another. I find a lot what I call the barbarian values system around here, not to cast aspersions upon you. Like I'm telling you, I'm not just here to like be an invader or a visitor and be like, oh, look around, tisking and shaking my finger and saying, oh, no, these people are just totally backwards. That's not my intention. However, I have to tell you, that was my experience when I came here. And I also want to speak a little bit about the experience, the metabolic death of this body. This is incontrovertible to me. Like, this is a very clear experience. There's no question or no doubt about what happened. This was not like an experience where my predecessor, like the person who is posthumous, they didn't take like some psychedelics, some mushrooms or some LSD and have an experience and then come back in a transformed state. I'm saying that is not what the experience was. And I have to make that distinction because I'm coming to understand that there are a lot of people that are coming forth with their unusual stories of otherworldly experiences that it turns out what they've been having those experiences while under the influence of some kind of substance. And whatever you feel about substances, I have to draw a distinction that what I experienced was not due to the effects of a chemical or molecular psychedelic molecule that came inside of the physical body. Because I have not taken the psychedelic drugs, and I have to be really careful what I do with my brain because of the epilepsy that is an artifact of the brain damage that killed the previous occupant. So I've had to come to an understanding from hearing other people's descriptions of what those mind states are, that psychedelics can give a person a sense of ego death, that the intensity of the experience can be so profoundly transformative that it is as if the old you has died and a new you has been revealed, or like broken out of the shell, or like some kind of reptile, like the skin coming off and a new you, or like molting out of your old form. Crabs do that too, insects do that too. So I understand that is part of the psychedelic experience for some people. That is not what I experienced. There was a literal death of this body, and that is the impetus for all of the interchange and also creativity that I experienced. So, and I do these brief pauses to save my work. Brief pause. And sharing this is a little bit personal, but I also have intentions to make it universal because I wanted to bring some insight to the idea of trauma-based mind control. And this is also known as MK Ultra mind control. This is something that has been going on from members of the deep state. And deep state we are defining here, loosely as the unelected shadow government that is actually controlled by malevolent otherworldly beings that has been the real actor behind the scenes controlling mundane affairs on Earth. And that many people that I'm finding out have had traumatic experiences from some form of like drug use, or that they have been made to feel as if they have died and then risen again in some kind of a new format. This is the whole idea of the monarch. The monarch butterfly is used as a symbol because the butterfly goes through a transformation, a metamorphosis process. So, okay, people who have listened to my show here on the radio for many years, and first of all, to long-term listeners, thank you so much. Thank you for being with me on this journey. And, each little hour that I record, I try to make a fractal of the larger microcosm. I try to contain everything that's important in that little hour in case it's the only thing that a person ends up listening to. So I understand that some of this is repetitive to people that have been listening to me for many years. And also, I really appreciate that you've been with me for so long. And I bring you up and I shout out to you because hopefully after years of listening, you understand what my values system is and where I'm coming from. So, and I bring up this MK Ultra Monarch thing because I'm starting to understand from looking at other people's behavior and looking at other people's, intellectual and creative output, that there is a hijacking of this natural metamorphosis process that is going on. So just like if you can imagine when a baby is being born, that is a natural process and it is kind of a metamorphosis of going from this internal experience in the womb where you're totally dependent upon the mother into being a fully independent, externalized creature with no umbilical cord, and you can walk around and do what you want to do, and you have to become self-responsible. And when that happens to the baby, it's a very special thing. That is not over-exaggeration, that it's an amazing transformation to be born, literally, from inside of the womb to successfully exit the womb and to take your first breath and get your consciousness fully into your body the way that a hand goes into a glove. And on the day that happens, on the day that you're born, that's very special. Everyone is celebrating you. In fact, even before you arrive, your parents are making like a little crib and everyone's like, oh, when's the due date? So it's very truthful that is a very special and unusual and unique metamorphosis, and that you are a special person on that day. And that's why we even celebrate your birthday every year and have a little party where people give you attention and say, we're happy that you're alive and that you made it through the birth canal. So all of that is appropriate, and that is similar to what this metamorphosis of consciousness process is like. I I don't want to call it the experience of death, but I have to recognize that that is what it is for many people, that the metabolic death of the physical body on the day that people die, it is very similar to the birthday, that it is a similar profound transformation, and everyone around you celebrates your life, remembers you, thinks of you, and gives you lots of attention. And also, the spotlight of the cosmos is on you in that moment. That's what I'm trying to say. That is a natural part of all of these metamorphosis moments, that you really are the center of attention and the spotlight of reality in those experiences. And also, look, everybody's got a birthday. Everybody who's here in the physical body successfully made it through the birth canal and has a date on the calendar that they did it. Everybody has a birthday. So we like to keep things in perspective. Yes, you successfully did this, and yes, many others did this too. So the hijacking and distortion that comes from the trauma-based mind control is to either artificially induce that feeling of metamorphosis and transformation when it hasn't actually happened, or to induce it prematurely. And when that happens, it's kind of like if a person has only ever run 5 miles. But what if you run 5 miles, but everyone is there clapping at the end and pretending as if you actually ran a marathon, and they all pat you on the back and they say, good job, you really did it. And you develop a sense of your own identity, your sense of self, that is based on that primary falsehood, that you actually ran the marathon when you actually didn't run a marathon. It was just a ruse, like a participation trophy or something that they gave you in order to think that you did. And that is what these mind control tactics are all about. That is what the ploy is all about. So I'm also coming to understand that sharing this information with people who have been traumatized in these programs, or, whatever, I've had these experiences, is really threatening to those people, because a lot of them have developed a new foundation identity as the special person that has had this special thing happen to them. And so, and this is, I'm treading on ground here that's a little bit close to home, because look at my story, look at what I say. Hey, there was a metabolic death in this body, and hey, I transformed, and hey, I did this thing called the flying rainbow lasagna. And the distinction that I'm trying to draw between myself and others is that I actually ran the marathon. I actually finished, I actually broke the tape at the end, and then got to cheer and, have some Gatorade and be refreshed. And that's very different than a person that only runs 5 miles and then is artificially cheered on as if they actually ran the marathon and celebrated. And so there are a lot of people, and some of them are celebrities and some of them are not, very well known, who have been subjected to these false experiences, either through the use of psychedelics. And so you got to start to understand here that humanity right now, in terms of their understanding of consciousness and their ability to withstand and not be manipulated, that have to withstand attempts to manipulate consciousness, are like kindergartners or just first graders. I'm not condescending to you. I'm telling humans right now that you're just at the beginning of this journey. That, first of all, science doesn't even want to talk about or recognize consciousness. It can't be weighed. It can't be measured. How much does your consciousness weigh? Science is not even prepared to touch consciousness with a 12-foot clown pole. So, blah, blah, blah. Humanity right now is very vulnerable in terms of manipulation of consciousness, because humans don't even understand what consciousness is and don't understand how easy it is to project falsehoods, false memories, false experiences, and false emotional and belief system constructs into the mind. And I'm urging everyone to develop their own inner immune system. That's part of what the Merkaba is, to develop your own sense of truth and discernment. And so also, how can you tell, guys, everyone who's watching and listening, that Aurora is a person that actually completed the marathon, as opposed to a person that ran 5 miles and just had everyone around them pat them on the back and pretend as if they actually finished the marathon? And the answer is, please look to my value system, look to my behavior, my value system as it is reflected in my behavior, and please look to my creative output. Because well, when I first came here and I had all of this information and I was not very articulate also, it took me many years to be able to learn how to flap my moving mouth parts and make the words express what I was, with the concepts that I had inside. I've always felt much more comfortable expressing these concepts in images. And so when I first got here in 2001, I immediately started making these very detailed drawings, and I would share them with other people, and people would sometimes nod politely, or I started to understand, would just think that it's just a line drawing. They didn't understand that there was actual information in there. So one of the things that I can point to as evidence of my veracity of my experience is that I've got all of these math-based understandings. Like all of the drawings that I do, all the paintings that I do, these sculptures, these are visual mathematical representations of real concepts. It's not just something that I made up as a decorative panel, and it's not just something that I made up as my own personal idea. And that when people would come to my studio years ago and they would be like, oh, this is really cool. You invented all of this. I want to say, no, I didn't invent this language. I merely have perceived this language and I'm putting it into a visual format that I can share with other people, and I'm trying to get other people to up to speed on this language too, so that we can not only have a conversation, we can write poetry together, or we can collaborate on wonderful, self-expressions together. That's the whole idea. So part of the value system is that we all are working together, and the we is not merely macroscopic humans in organic multicellular bodies. It's all consciousness. This is how you can tell if the person really ran the marathon. Because at the end of the marathon, you connect with everything and your identity expands and you recognize that you're a very small little portion of a much greater totality. That consciousness is the totality and that each one of us is a fragment of that consciousness. So like I've spoken about this a lot too, the idea that when we are reascending this ladder of density, and so we're going from the physical, we've come from the less dense realms into the physical realm. Now we're reascending from the physical realm back to the less dense realms. And as we're doing that, we're going through the layers of the chakras. Chakras are energy centers. That's what that exotic word means. It means spinning wheel of energy. And I'm over here at my little piano. We start off with C, which would be red, the physical realm. And that's the densest realm that we're in right now. And then there is the emotional realm. But back to the emotional realm. The emotional realm is made of mammalian emotions, these denser emotions, not unconditional love. So this is slowed down emotional love that gives us this emotional experience. Then there is the level of daily waking conscious intellect. Heart, which is nothing more than the CPU, the central processing unit of your overarching body. This is communication at the throat level, and this means sending out words or information that is clothed with symbolic meaning. Or this is also where you can unclothe concepts from their symbolic meaning. You can just take the pure concept with no more symbol. And then up from there, that's the brow, the level of insight, just that unclothed, unadulterated, pure insight, pure concept. And that's your true mind. And then up from there, this is your violet chakra, and that's the connection to the divine, or the higher dimensional, less dense realm. It's where you plug into the cosmos. It's where you get all of the energy and vitality and thought energy from in order to continue to exist. So this little octave, this is what we define as humanity. Brief pause. So when we're going up this ladder and we get to the level of our brow chakra, that means that we are almost all the way there, but we haven't really connected again back to the cosmos or the source or that central convergence point in the little yellow sculpture that I use in so many of my little videos. So the idea is that when you awaken your inner eye, your third eye, your brow chakra, you're at the most vulnerable level of this inner metamorphosis and development. Because a lot of people raise their energy to that level, either naturally or unnaturally. And I'll define natural as just through using your birthday suit and not through taking anything external. So that means no magic elixir, no mushrooms, no powders, no atomic gold, no nothing, just you and your body. And I'm not casting aspersions upon substances. It's not about that. It is the idea that those substances or any external quote unquote technology makes these things happen prematurely. And just like the development of puberty, the going from being a child to being a sexually mature adult that can reproduce, this is supposed to happen at the right time. So of course, if artificial estrogen mimickers are available in the environment, then they might make a young woman develop years too early and begin expressing the maturity of sexuality many years too soon. And that is what it can be like if a person takes LSD or psilocybin mushrooms or some of these other substances, that it can make their development happen early, as opposed to at the time that it would happen naturally. And I'm not, again, there's no judgment in all of this. It's just giving you tools and viewpoint for clarity so that we can all begin to understand what is going on. Because on the one hand, it's like, woohoo, consciousness freedom. Do whatever you want with your own mind. Take whatever molecules you want. That's wonderful. However, there's a real question about the way that these molecules are being used, when they are used, and the effect that they're having on consciousness. Because I'm trying to say that I've met some people and learned recently that some people, when they are taking these metamorphosizing substances from outside of their body, are having what I would call a false awakening, that it is opening that third eye, but using some external accoutrement in order to do it, and that the viewpoint and the conclusions that are drawn from that perspective are, by the very foundation, by the very definition, distorted. It's like if you're a musician and you're playing the music, you're supposed to know, hey, you got to play this note, then you got to play this note, then you got to play this note. And if I'm telling you like, hey, you got to play this note in 10 pages, that's not very effective. And when people begin to take these artificial substances that create metamorphosis, that's like jumping ahead 10 notes and saying like, oh, here's this, or an artificial amplification of the ability to ingest information. Because the brow chakra, or that aperture on your body, that's where you ingest information. And you get information. You can get information directly from the sun and the stars, and you don't need to have any human with a face giving you your insight. Like, that's what I would really encourage you. I appreciate it if you listen to my show, and I appreciate it if you view my artwork. However, I would encourage everyone to develop their own direct connection to the energy of the cosmos and be able to see directly. And this is what I say is the analogy of getting your library card of the cosmos. So when you awaken your inner eye, that is like getting your library card. I don't know if any of you got a library card when you were a little kid, like, whatever, a kindergartner or a little grade schooler. And then it's like, wow, with that, you can go into that big building that's full of books, that's full of information, and you can literally check out anything, any information that is in that entire building, you now have access to. And the structure of the cosmos is that library, that all of the molecules and all of the time, every aspect of the time field is a giant library of consciousness. And that we begin to become literate and we begin to be able to access it when we activate our third eye. But I told you just now on the ladder of consciousness, that's that note down here. We got to make it to this note up here in order to really be connected. And this note up here, I call that the cosmic librarian, because if you go into the library and you're just this new little person with a brand spanking new library card, where do you even begin? What is the book for you? What is the first book that you should read? What is the most salient information for you to begin with? So the idea is you consult with the librarian who says, oh, you got to learn about this. And then when you return that book, then I'll teach you about this. And then when you're done digesting that, then I'll teach you about this. And that also, when you read a book, you're supposed to go from page 1 to page 2 to page 3. You're not supposed to start on page 71 and then skip back to page 27 and then go to page 93. That if you do that, that is a way of taking the facts that are being presented in an organized structure and presenting them in a way that distorts the structure. So I've often joked this way too, that when you start to activate your third eye, you start to read the giant book of the cosmos. And what the book says is, you are God. You are a very special and divine person. And what the next paragraph says is, so is every other aspect of consciousness, because God or divinity is exemplified by consciousness, and that you're not the only aspect of consciousness. So if we just give you that first little snippet and then we don't give you any further information, it is very easy to mislead you and to say you're the only special person, you're the only divine being, and everything is coming from you. And the truth is, you are a special being. You are a divine being. You are creating the world around you. And you're also in a symphony with many other musicians. You're not the first musician. There have been many millions and billions of musicians up to this point. You're not the only musician that exists right now. And the musicians and the music that we make, it's not just macroscopic humanity making this music. It's also the microbiome. It's also the molecular realm, like little tiny molecules forming covalent bonds and diatomic bonds. It's also the realm of the grand scale, like the solar system being one cell within a much, much larger body. So imagine the music that is being made on a very grand, very macroscopic, galactic scale. We are all musicians that are all contributing to that music. So when you go from the level of blue, indigo, brow chakra up to the level of violet, having the cosmic librarian give you that perspective, that is completing the journey. That is really making the metamorphosis. And when people do that and they act from that perspective, then they are acting in balance and they're really sending out true unconditional cosmic love. So that's what I'm trying to say. The most vulnerable moment of development is when the person who's metamorphosizing has just made it up to the crown, up to the brow indigo chakra, rather, the point that's right up above your physical eyes, right in the center of your forehead. There's a lot of people who have raised their energy to that level, either naturally, sometimes naturally can mean through yoga and breathing exercises, or extreme duress. Like sometimes people do it through sweat lodges, the Inipi Lodge of the Native Americans, or through other great levels of physical endurance, or through other extreme events. I mean, all of those, that counts to do that, to have that experience. However, that's not the end of the journey. That the real perspective comes when you reach the pinnacle of the mountain. Not just, the area that's almost the plateau, that's almost at the pinnacle. And you think, oh, I've really reached the pinnacle. No, you reach the pinnacle of the mountain when you really reconnect with unity consciousness. And that's what that realization is, that consciousness is consciousness. Consciousness is divinity. You're an aspect of consciousness, or each one of us has an aspect or a portion of consciousness. And that's like saying, I have my music. I'm playing this note. This is my consciousness. It's not the only note on the piano. It's not the only note in the symphony. This is the big thing. So I am saying all of this, so many words, in order to get across the idea that in the metamorphosis experience that I had, it was not created or incepted from taking a substance or anything like that, and that the end result of my journey has been to understand that I'm a player in the great band, in the great symphony. I'm one aspect of this consciousness. And yes, each one of us, I'm powerful, and each one of us is powerful. That, I hope that really comes across in the things that I speak about, and the videos that I do, and the value system that I try to share with others. Because I wish for each one of us to have a healthy and well-formed ego that is the end result of reading truthful books from the Library of Consciousness. That when we read the books in order, according to the librarian, we develop a story, a narrative structure of self that is accurate. And I'm not casting aspersions here, but the people that have been subjected to trauma-based mind control, or have taken a hallucinogenic substance and prematurely developed their vision and their mind, or had premature visionary experiences, their egos are not healthy and well developed. And that's that sense of, if you have to be the only singer on the stage, and like a diva, like you want to be the only person singing and you want to drown out everyone else and have no one else, expressing themselves. That is one of the key hallmarks, or I want to say symptoms, or that's a big cautionary flag of a person that hasn't reached all the way to that connection with something, to connecting with unity consciousness, or to connecting with the sense of everythingness, and to understand that you are a part of everything, you're an individual, you're unique, and that each individual is unique and each individual is valuable and valued and is making a contribution. Because look, if a person erroneously comes to the conclusion that they are the central creative emanator of all of reality, I mean, I don't know if you ever read that wonderful Kurt Vonnegut story, Breakfast of Champions. It's really worthwhile, and he's a good writer. Check it out. It's about a used car salesman named Dwayne Hubler, who happens upon an unpublished science fiction manuscript that says, you are the only real person in the world. It is written kind of like a directive to the reader. And Dwayne Hubler reads this manuscript as if it is a message directly to him. And he draws all of the conclusions that one would draw. I'm the only real person in the world. Everyone else is an automaton. Therefore, I shall pick up a machine gun and shoot all of the fake people. And so this is the idea that when some people have a partial awakening or a distorted awakening, they kind of go into the Dwayne Hubler mental arena where they think, oh, I'm the only real person out there. I'm creating reality. I'm emanating everything. That means no one else is real. No one else's suffering is real. And I can pretty much be as violent or as destructive as I want to with no consequences. And that's not truthful. When people have an accurate metamorphosis and awakening, what they accurately understand is that everything is an aspect and a reflection of self. All of the outer is a reflection of the inner. And if you have that realization, why would you want to pick up a machine gun and shoot the outer? Because that is like shooting the inner. And this is part of also what the Tibetan meditators of the Far East, the Buddhists, call cultivating the rainbow body. And it's funny, I learned about that because I was visiting this monastery that is in Woodstock, where I used to live. It's up on the mountain, on Overlook Mountain there. And they have a bookstore and like a little learning center. And I was in between activities, and I had time to go to the bookstore, and literally a book jumped off the shelf at me, and it was called Rainbow Painting. And I'm like, wow, that's got to be for me. I got to read this book. And it's not about literal painting. It is about cultivating your body until it becomes what the Tibetans call this rainbow body. And one of the practices involved in this cultivation is seeing all other life and all other consciousness as an outer projection of the inner. And here's another example, the ancient Mayans that had a greeting that says, in Lakesh, that means, I am a shard of your soul. I am a shard of you, and you are a shard of me. And if that is really the concept that is embodied, unless you are profoundly self-destructive, why would you kill other shards of yourself? That's the real deal. That's what's really going on here. Like, if we look at humanity and what is going on in terms of human culture on the planet right now, yes, there are a lot of unhealthy people that are working from distorted and twisted belief systems, and they themselves have been traumatized and given mental programs or belief systems that are not healthy and that are not good. And, is the solution, if you look at those beings as aspects of your own self, is the solution to pick up a machete and chop off their heads, or, do something super violent like that? And to me, that's not the answer. And I hope that you can sense now from my value system that that is not my approach to this. So I'm here on earth, right? And I understand, wow, there's definitely a lot of disease that's very symptomatic. I see a lot of people acting poorly. What's the solution? The solution to me, clearly, is not a machine gun. To me, the solution is this microphone that I'm speaking into, and the artwork that I make, and the videos that I record, and the music that I play and that I sing. This is all about how we are allowed to have an impact on the people around us. So it is ethical to have an impact on the world around you. It is not, being here is not like you're supposed to be wrapped up in a plastic bubble and having no interaction with the world around you. You're here to interact. You're here to play music and to learn what it is like to have an instrument, and to learn what it is like to be in the symphony of life and to be submerged in the material realm. So that's one big thing, because some people think like, oh no, I shouldn't be affecting reality. I'm a bad person if I affect reality. No. You're here to affect reality. We're all here to add to the experience of being here. So that's the first thing. You have permission. You're allowed to be here, and you're even allowed to do stuff while you're here. But the next thing is, what stuff are you allowed to do? Like, are you allowed to pick up a machine gun and shoot other people? Actually, no, you're not allowed to do that, because I'm really careful about making certain that people do not take what I share in terms of these ideas out of context. Just like I'm really careful, if I make some food for someone, I want to serve it to them when it's hot and delicious. I would never make wonderful food and then leave it out on the counter so it could get full of bacteria and salmonella and then feed it to them, right? So I'm really careful about the way that I present these ideas, because I don't want them to be mishandled or taken out of context or eaten in a way that gives you indigestion. I want these ideas to be taken in such a way so that it's taken as nourishment. But we are allowed to be here affecting one another, and the concept is called sympathetic vibration. So compassion literally is a sympathetic vibration of the heart, that when you are practicing real compassion, not merely romantic attraction. So, and this is the difference, like you can love a palm tree with unconditional love and compassion. You're not necessarily romantically attracted to the palm tree and you want to hug it and kiss it and take it to your bed at night. That is the difference. You can love unconditionally a microbe or a molecular structure or even the solar system and the cosmos. And this is not about procreative love. And compassion and this level of unconditional love has a lot to do with thinking of things from the other person's viewpoint, or understanding where their behavior derives from. So it's if I love a dog, then I understand this is the dog's mentality, and this is its motivation, and this is what it wants, and this is what makes it feel good and happy. Or if I unconditionally love another person, then I say, this is why they act the way they do. This is what they've been through. This is what motivates them. This is what would make them happy, and this is what would make them unhappy. And what I'm trying to get across here is that love is an actual vibration, and when you are compassionate towards another being, you are matching the vibration of your own heart energy center to the vibration of that other being's heart energy center. And this is real cosmic lovemaking, not procreative sex the way that mammals do it on Earth. You can have this level of love and partnership with the galaxy, with the stars as abstractions, with molecules, with atoms, with, a dragonfly, with a hummingbird, with a giant palm tree, with anything. Sympathetic vibration is what happens if you play the guitar. If you pluck one guitar string and you don't touch any of the other strings vibrate sympathetically. They vibrate because they are in the presence of the string that has been stimulated, and because they're all connected via the atmosphere. All of those strings on the guitar are connected by the atmosphere. All humanity is connected to. All life is connected to. This is also like the example of the many multiple metronomes. Many non-synchronized metronomes on a table or some other slightly bouncy surface that are each one is going at their own rate. And if you allow them to go long enough, eventually they all synchronize, and that is because they are all sharing energy. The table is the commonality where they live, and the ones that are going faster give off some energy to the ones that are going slower, and so they all equalize out. This is ethics. This is interdimensional ethics. Aurora, are you allowed to be here? Are you allowed to be influencing us and our minds and our trajectory by being here? And the answer is yes. I am allowed to be here in a human physical body, and I'm allowed to speak and to sing and to dance my DNA in its own unique format, and to have that affect the other quote-unquote guitar strings of this human society and planet. And because I hope I'm making a distinction here, there are a lot of very unethical participants that are here that are affecting other beings in a way that is not ethical and that is not loving, and that is what the mind control is. There's a whole species, there's many types of space races that do not share the value system that I share and that I promote. They're very much like the barbarian value system that I do not appreciate here on Earth, and they believe in many ways that might makes right, and to the victor goes the spoils, and if you can do it, you're allowed to do it without considering the ethics. It's kind of like saying, oh, if I'm allowed to play ugly music like this, cover your ears, guys. Hey, I'm allowed to do it. Why not do it? And the answer is yes, you're allowed to do things. However, there are consequences to all the things that are done. So the idea is, if we were in a perfect, undistorted system, all the things that are negative disruptions would receive instantaneous consequences that stop them from doing those disruptions. And it is only because we are in a distorted time field that there is a lag between doing something like this, ugly music, and the negative consequences that come from making ugly music. It's like if you're a dog and you make a mess, you poop on the floor, and if your owner does not scold you immediately and say, hey, that's naughty, don't do that, let's go outside instead, then the dog just totally does not connect the punishment to the poop on the floor. And this is what a lot of malevolent energy presences. Some of them have been corporeal, like they have been in bodies, but they are not in bodies right now. This is the way that they've been avoiding their consequences of their negative actions. They make poops all over the floor and they don't get immediately punished, and so they do not connect in any way the pooping with negative behavior. Like they think this is totally fine. Like, think about that. If you could escape consequences for 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 years, if you could keep on hopping from planet to planet, escaping or avoiding or deferring consequences, then you could be like, woohoo, I can poop anywhere I want and no one will ever stop me from doing this. And the idea is that right here on this planet, right now, what we are all doing collectively as a society and also as individuals is to make the poopers have to take responsibility for their poops. This is what is happening right now. So there's a bunch of different factors or variables that are at play. Because it's very logical to say, Aurora, this has been going on for how many thousands of years, and why is this going to change now? Because of new developments, and that's an important thing. Like, literally, the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a new development. It is a new invention. It is a new tool. So any of these limitations or long-standing situations of imbalance, they don't have to stay in their long-standing situation anymore. We have this new tool that we can use to rectify the time field. That is the whole point of my being here. I hope you are understanding now. So I'm speaking as Aurora, the abstract energy presence that saw an opportunity to rectify and heal the time field by coming into this physical, human, organic, multicellular container when its original inhabitant had been murdered, literally killed, as part of these malevolent dark technologies or hijacking of the time field or distortion of DNA. That's like the ugly music over here. That ugly music was being played, and that is what was intending to destroy the previous ego structure that occupied this body. And I said, wait, instead of that, let's do this instead. And I vibrated the structure of this body so that the body didn't die, and a new ego structure was created. And the new ego structure is called Aurora and is speaking to you right now. Let me also clarify this, because I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm talking a lot about myself and my own journey in this particular broadcast. I hope that it is clarifying, and I hope that it's something that everyone can use to apply to their own journey, that it's not just me talking about myself, but that it's something that is valuable nourishment for you in your own way too. So Aurora is a newly created ego structure, but that doesn't mean that I'm a fake person. I'm a very real person. I'm a real persona. I don't want you to think that I'm merely a character or a construct or something fake or disingenuous or not real. That's not truthful at all. So here's my basic understanding, is that we have aspect of pure consciousness, and when we come here in the physical body, we grow an ego over that basic, like, base or the form upon which, like if you ever made a paper mache, you have the inflated balloon, and that is like the basic consciousness structure, and then you put the soaked pieces of newspaper on top of the balloon structure, and the newspaper in this analogy is the ego. Yet that's the construction, and we're not born with the ego. We develop this narrative structure, usually in infancy and early childhood, and we strengthen it and refine it into adulthood. So I did that experience of constructing an ego in adulthood after the previous ego and the previous occupant of this body had been destroyed. Because I learned you have to have an ego. You have to have that social interface in order to be able to share the ideas and the concepts and the feelings and the energy that is what we would define as quote unquote inside. So little tiny infants or people that are nonverbal have wonderful interior realms, whole landscapes of what they're feeling, what they're going through, and what they're experiencing without verbalized language and without being able to say, my name is this, and I define myself as this, and this is my context, and this is my boundary, and this is who I am. It becomes very difficult to share what is inside with the outside world. That is what I learned. So I had to develop this ego structure known as Aurora in order to be able to share the ideas that I have inside of me in this cultural context. But we all have to understand, I understand about myself, and we all have to understand that the ego is a temporary structure, meaning temporal, located in time. This is not the eternal aspect of self. So, I'm wearing my favorite rainbow shirt today. I won't wear this shirt forever. I'm just wearing it for today. It fits on this body. It works in this climate. I need it for this context, but I won't always be wearing this shirt. And I feel the same way about this body. And I feel the same way about this ego, that for right now, these are the characteristics and the self-presentation that is appropriate for this time and place, and that reflects the basic foundation truth of who I am. And the basic foundation truth is the energetic signature, that abstraction. So even if I weren't wearing this face, even if I didn't have this voice, even if I didn't have this little rainbow shirt that you might have seen me wear, I predict that if we met in the abstract world, you would be able to recognize me from my energetic signature. And that's the feeling that you get when you look at my artwork, or when you listen to my voice, or when you listen to a recorded video, or when we meet and I hug you. It's that feeling of who I am. And so I'm sharing this in order for each one of us to understand that who you are on a real level, like on an incontrovertible, empirical level, is not your ego, and your ego is the temporary set of clothes, that the paper mache shell that is clothing the consciousness that is at the core of each one of us. And that the ego is not something to be hated and reviled. So many people are like, kill your ego, get rid of your ego. That's kind of like the same level of ridiculousness of people that say, get rid of your chakras. No, don't get rid of your chakras, but do refine what you have. So it's like saying, tune your instrument. Don't just throw it out the window. Refine your sense of self. Refine your narrative structure, because you are also more than just what you have inherited from your immediate previous generation of ancestors, like, your parents or your grandparents. You are more than just the set of ideas and values or religious teachings or intellectual isms that they have given to you. And you are more than just what human society has programmed you to be. P.S. Human society has pretty much programmed most of us to just be good worker bees, or like good ants or good slaves. Mostly society cares about you getting up every morning at 7 a.m., grabbing your coffee and driving on the roads to get to your office by 9 a.m. so that you can work in your cubicle and then, march home like the rest of the ants marching at 5 p.m. That serves human society. Human society, if I can give you the wake-up call, was not incepted or organized or created for the ease and convenience of humans. Just like human language and the human mind, this is a construct and an implant. And this way of doing society, this way of doing life, is not what humans have created for themselves. So that's a good segue in the last part of this recording to get into how can we heal? How can we live in a better way? Because I definitely see in this world not only barbarian value system, like only the strong shall survive, to the victor go the spoils, but also a level of insanity in terms of the way that humans spend their time, humans having to do work in a way that is uncomfortable and degrades the environment and degrades their own health in order to achieve the basics of what they need to be sustained physically. So you're not supposed to have to work at a job that you hate, that you drive to on a long commute in order to, and that makes you sacrifice your health and vitality just in order to be able to pay for your rent or mortgage and your food and your car insurance and other, administrative aspects of life. That is not what you are meant to be here to do. But doing that is what is rewarded in the social construction that is not created for humanity's well-being. It's basically like you are rewarded for doing things that are not good and healthy for you. And that it is now time to change that because you don't have to play music like this. That's not the right music. And I think that everybody that is grabbing their giant mug of coffee and driving their polluting car on the massive freeways and going to their cubicle jobs in the morning, I think everybody who's doing that life knows that it's not the right music. They know that that's out of tune. They know that it's not ideal, and that they try to do whatever they can in order to change their life, like maybe to be free and go on a vacation on the weekends, or, like to go to some place in nature on the weekends, or have a 2-week vacation in the summer, like all of these things. It is not the right way to live. So, and the reason why so many humans do that is because this is the social construct up to this point. However, it is not necessary to continue this level of insanity. And we change on an individual level, and then the more individuals that change, it changes on a macroscopic social level. How does it change? I've used this analogy quite a lot. Plants in a meadow. So the first thing is changing the inner expectation from an expectation of competition to an expectation of collaboration. If we are musicians and we're all playing together, I don't want to have to compete with you. I don't want to have to compete to see if I can play louder than you. And then you're going to try to play louder than me, and I'm going to try to play louder than you. If we did that, the only type of music that we could play would be, like some kind of extremely loud thrash metal. That we would not be playing delicate little fugues from Bach. We would be that's the barbarian value system. So in order to be a part of this meadow, this ecosystem, the economy should be more like an ecosystem. And even though, I'll say this, I said this 10 million different times, Darwin and the whole idea of the evolution via biological competition, that all comes out of Victorian values of the late 1800s that were heavily invested in Christianity, and this idea of if you worked hard and served the Lord, then the Lord would reward you with a pat on the head in the form of money and physical sustenance and things that you need. And the Victorians thought, hey, if you're in the gutter, it's because you did something that God didn't like and you deserve to be poor. And those values were projected onto the natural world. They're not actually the values of the natural world. The natural world values not just, quote unquote, the strongest or the loudest. If it did, then microbes would not be in existence. Like, hey, I can squash a microbe with my toe. I can kill a virus easily. None of those things would be in existence. Larger organisms would have completely wiped them all out. Clearly, that is not the real structure of nature. So that's an artificial justification and a distortion that was used to look at the biological realm and then to base our economy on what is the perceived competition of the biological realm. None of that is right. In a meadow, and now there are real scientists and researchers that are proving this, in a meadow, the plants are not all competing for nutrients and water and sunlight. They are actually all collaborating so that everyone gets nutrients and water and sunlight. Same thing in a forest. I moved from upstate, up in Humboldt County. There's beautiful redwood forests there, and the forests can be very dense, and sometimes not a lot of sunlight gets through to the trees that are at the center of the forest. So what happens is the ones that are on the periphery, where there's lots of sunlight, will collect extra nutrients and send them via the mycelial network along the root structure, carbon and nitrogen and other wonderful nourishment to the plants that are in the interior of the forest so that everybody can survive and thrive and stay alive. And this is the antithesis of competition. Scientists in the, a couple of hundred years ago, they wanted to say, oh, look, the trees are all fighting for survival to see who can grab the most sunlight, just like we're all in the capitalistic society fighting for money to see who can get the most money. But if we really look at the way the forest is behaving, it is totally collaborative. And redwood trees in particular, they do not grow like one single redwood tree out of a whole giant field with nothing around it. They grow in groves. And that's because their root structures help to stabilize and hold up their neighbors. And if you cut down too many of them, then they become too destabilized and they tend to fall over in a big storm. So this is a literal analogy of the biological structure that we're on, this beautiful planet, that we are meant to support one another at the level of our roots. We are meant to be connected via the human mycelium. And if you are in the deep interior of the forest and you are not receiving a lot of direct sunlight or direct money or direct food, then it is absolutely the job of the rest of the forest that does get access to sunlight and food and money to send some of it your way so that you can be sustained, because it's about sustaining the entire collective. This is a very different viewpoint than the way that most humans are acting right now. So I'm sharing all of this. I hope that you can sense the value system that I come from. Because if I were one of these planetary invaders, I would have said, oh, look, I'm much bigger and much stronger than you. I'm much more advanced and much more sophisticated than you. I can just come in and squash you all like bugs and take over your planet and take all your resources and twist you around and make you do what I want you to do. And I've not been doing that. That's not my value system. My value system is to say, hey, I found this way of playing music. And I think it's really cool. It's called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And I do it myself and I do it every day. And I know that being here is affecting all of the other life forms around me, that I'm not just in my own private kiddie pool. I know I'm connected to everyone else. And I'm intending to send out this as a loving collaboration, not as something that is overbearing or against your willpower or forced upon you. I'm not forcing lasagna down your throat. And that's my whole approach to sharing these ideas, to sharing my artwork, to inviting people to participate in my webinars. This is all about offering something to humanity and to people on this planet and not forcing it or imposing it upon you. That's why I also say this is like joining the advanced jazz band. No one forces you to join the advanced jazz band. In fact, you actually have to kind of practice and audition and see if you have the skills in order to be with the other musicians. So being able to be in the meadow of consciousness and collaborate with the other beings as opposed to compete with them for resources, that's the audition. We've all been auditioning here to see if we can express with our value system through our behavior, if we can live in a meadow and help one another out. So, I'm at the end. Thank you for being with me on the journey. Thank you for vibrating sympathetically to the sounds and the concepts and the values that I send out. And thank you for dancing like a flying rainbow lasagna in each one of you, your own unique way. Please keep dancing.
on the Tracks you can catch every Monday night and Friday night